I had the great pleasure of being invited to Logically's second event, LogicCon, in Columbus, Ohio, the week of the 15th of October, 2024. Logically is a managed service provider, but a very large one. I've also had the great pleasure of being acquired. I was the first MSP to be acquired by Logically. So I feel like I'm really part of the community still, or part of the family still. But I went on site, they had a great event. I set up the podcast booth. I had a lot of great conversations with the staff of Logically, with some vendors that were there, and some other people. It was a great time. I'm humbled and thankful that I got the opportunity to do that. The following is one of the conversations at this great event. I want to thank Logically for letting me do this. I had a great time. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. I found myself at 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. I took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People ask me, how'd you do it? What's the secret? I need to lose weight. How'd you do it? How did I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Well, Don Cook,
Hi, good to meet you.
nice to meet you. What is it about football that attracts you?
I still like college football the
Yeah.
best. While there's still, I guess, the new name, image, and likeness is kind of creeping into the sport. I think it's still pure in a sense. Like the kids are, they're still kids. They're still in
Yes.
college,
Yeah.
and they're not corrupted by the pro level yet. So that's what I enjoy. I'm a huge Penn State fan.
So do you watch like high school football as well?
I will, but I haven't really. I don't have that kind of crowd yet. My kids are still 7 and 9, so.
Do it.
But it's not out of the cards. We've got some good football in Northeast Ohio. We've got St. Ed's and Ignatius. Avon is even coming on strong these days. In fact, Penn State's starting quarterback is from Medina.
Huh.
Yep, Drew Aller. So there's some good high school football played where I live up in Cleveland.
And you were running back?
I was. That's a good guess.
By your body type.
Yeah. Some people say middle linebacker, so I think I've added a few pounds since my college days.
I
Yeah,
can see that too. Yeah. It's a tough position.
yeah, it was fun. I wasn't very good, but it was fun to play.
Yeah.
Good team sport.
And what is your feeling about the concussions and everything? How are we doing with that in the sport?
Yeah, that's a sensitive subject. I think unless the NFL does something about that, the NFL is going to look a lot differently than it does today. With the protocols in place right now, I think it's a good band-aid, but I think long term there's still effects on the brain that we're just scratching the surface of. So I think we've got a long way to go there. But with the lawsuits that could come of it, I just think that the sport's going to look different unless something happens.
And will that permeate to college, you think?
It's got to. It's probably going to start there. Whether if it's different helmets that they have to wear, or the rules are already changing, right? You and I both know there's like less contact. The kickoff's changed. This targeting rules in place. The defenseless players. So it's not just the quarterbacks anymore that are being protected, which is good. But you get the purists of the sport that you probably know and love, and people like the hits. So it'll be interesting to see what all kinds shakes out from it.
Will you encourage your kids to play?
My kids will play flag until something comes of it. So that's a great question. No, there's no contact in my family, and anytime in the near future.
You think you ever?
Having lived through it, yeah.
Were you concussed? You feel?
I got concussed once from a kickoff return. Yeah. So yeah, it's a real thing, man. Now, luckily, my level wasn't recurring, but for some it is. I mean, if you look at Tua down in Miami, Tua Tagovailoa, 3 concussions already. So I'm a Philadelphia Flyers fan too, having grown up in Philly, and we had Eric Lindros, if you remember that name, who ended his career after the 3rd concussion. So football's even worse. I can't believe Tua is even considering it, to be quite honest.
I am kind of proud of, by the way, I shouldn't say proud. I'm happy that you saw the Dolphins coach and all the media, they're telling Tua, hey,
Hang it
don't
up.
play. Yeah.
Yeah.
There wasn't, I didn't hear a lot of, suck it up and get back out here.
No.
Quality of life issue.
In fact, you bring up a great point. I didn't hear that at all.
You're right.
I don't think anyone's saying that to him, which is good, except for maybe the folks we don't know. What's his agent saying? What are his best friends saying? His posse. Behind closed doors may be different. And these kids, they grow up with this. This is the only thing they know, so it's hard to take it away. And you get players like Brett Favre now, who's going through all that CTE stuff too.
Yeah.
And you have to rip these guys away from the game. They don't see it coming. It's tough.
Especially when they played their whole life.
Right.
Devoted their life to it.
Yeah, they devoted their life to it, and everything they have in life is from that.
Right.
The friends that they have, the money that they made, maybe the family that they've built. It's got to be tough. Yeah.
I was concussed once actually playing baseball, playing second base, trying to turn a double play, and I got taken out.
Oh, takeout slide.
Yeah,
Oh,
takeout slide went right down on my head, and passed out for a moment, threw up, and it was it's tough. I can't imagine.
So never got hit with a baseball in the head, right?
I did,
Oh,
but
you
not
did.
just grades. Never to kind of send it back to the pitcher. Yeah.
So you got a lot of chin music to do it.
A little bit, yeah.
Right.
And of course, I coached my daughters in soccer, so we had concussion protocols. If we thought there was, we had to ask who the president was and things like this, to kind of see if they were okay. But it's a really tough situation.
It is. It is. It's across all sports, I suppose, now too.
Yeah, it really does. I wonder what will happen. Now, you're on the board of Logically.
I am.
I was the first MSP acquisition of Logic.
No kidding.
2019.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
How did that go? Well for you?
Fantastic. I'm here.
Yeah, that's great. You're doing your own thing.
I'm doing my own thing. I did some consulting. I'm doing some podcasting now. It was great fun. What do you do on the board?
So I'm new to the board. I just joined in January. But I'd like to think I give strategic guidance to the company. I'm lucky enough to work alongside Josh and Steven and MJ and all the executives there, and I get to hear all the day-to-day nuance of the business, which is awesome, and try and help along the way.
We're here of course, we're at LogicCon in Columbus, the second one. It's we're early October. It's a little too cold out there for me, by the way, but it's, I hear it's supposed to be warmer next week, but that's
of course, next week. It's always next week.
We're not here. Yeah. What are some of your goals this week, Don?
So I want to meet as many customers as I can. So being new to the board, I want to understand all the use cases, get to know them and how Logically is helping their businesses. From a board perspective, that's one thing I'm detached from. I get the messaging from the team, but I'd love having those one-on-one conversations. I think it makes all the difference, to make sure that we're going in the right direction and our customers have the best experience possible.
And that's tough to do. When you talk to customers, if they're here, they're probably happy. But what do you do with those disgruntled ones? I mean, it happens.
Yeah, it does happen. So getting to the bottom of the challenge. Sometimes it's a communication issue. Sometimes it's a tech issue. Sometimes it's both. But a company should be able to listen and then address the challenges head on and not try and hide behind anything. And I think, that's, if you go in with that mentality and understanding the customer is always right, then you're going to come out to a good place. So that's my take on it.
Do you have a tech background, Don?
I do. So I've been in SaaS technology for, I don't know, 18 plus years or so.
And what kind of SaaS is it? Is it B2B?
Yeah, B2B SaaS. So I've been in LMS, I've been in EHR, I've been in network monitoring. So done a little bit of everything.
Language, I mean, learning, LMS,
Yeah.
of course. And yeah, it's a lot to build a platform. It's a lot to build.
It takes a lot. And when I started, SaaS wasn't really, the sexy thing that it is now.
Yeah.
Sexy from a business perspective,
Sure.
right?
I think it's sexy as hell.
Yeah, it is sexy as hell. The cloud is amazing.
It is.
So when I first started in tech in '99, the cloud was still kind of a bad word. Well, how am I going to protect my data? And well, where does your software live? So all those questions that we had to go through then, we don't necessarily have to go through anymore unless you're working with the government and you're getting an on-prem solution. So a lot's changed over time. But it's been fun. It's been a fun ride along the way. I'm lucky enough to have a couple exits along the way, and like yourself. And so trying to help build companies to go in the right direction and prepare for the best case scenario, whatever that may be for each business.
When you're talking to a customer, sometimes there's a little hesitancy from the customer to kind of really tell you what's going on and kind of, how it must be, is it a
Get to the
tough
bottom of that.
Yeah, you got to get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to the communication piece that we talked about before. If either party isn't willing to communicate, then the outcome's not going to happen. So I don't think I think the anxiety leading up to it is the hardest part, and just understanding that logically wants to do the right thing and the customer wants the best outcome. So as long as you're marching down that path, I think that nothing bad could come of that as long as everyone's putting their cards on the table.
Do you have any backgrounds with managed service providers?
MSPs, yeah, we do. So from a vendor's perspective, so the technology that I've had over the years, we've had various VAR networks and MSPs who not only resold our software, but also used it in a managed service perspective.
I see. And what do you think of the community?
It's fragmented. It's tough. And there's what's interesting about it is and the fragmentation is good in some cases. So depending on how these MSPs are positioned and what they're bringing to the market, there's a big need for it. So we talked about the talent gap in an earlier session today, which is a real thing. Small businesses, even up to 500 employees, they can't staff for everything. They can't staff for cyber. They can't staff for monitoring. They can't staff for hardware deployments. So MSPs play a critical role in that. So it's good. It's good to have all that fragmentation, because there's a partner for every customer out there depending on their specific needs.
Has AI helped you?
I think AI is still on the come for me, to use a craps term. In wait and see mode. Certainly, ChatGPT is something I use almost every day. It's great for ideas, great for first drafts of things. Certainly, it's not in its final form when you produce something from ChatGPT. So as long as you know that going in, it's a valuable tool. Saves tons of time throughout the thought process. But outside of that, I haven't gotten anything to really work for the business. That's pure AI at this point. And a lot of our vendors are introducing AI technologies, to kind of crunch numbers from an analytics standpoint, but they haven't made it actually force a change, or it's sort of recommendations versus remediation in that world.
In the SaaS world, talk to me about some lessons learned.
Boy, from what perspective you want to learn
From
about?
actually creating. Many MSPs want to create some platforms, and they're afraid to go in, and they're hesitant to enter. And
I get that. So several things. One is the recurring revenue aspect of it, right? So a lot of MSPs want that recurring ARR or MRR, depending on what the tech is. So that can't be the only goal that you have, though. So, what sort of problems are you going to address? And I would, as an MSP, go out and look at white label solutions before building something on your own. And a lot of vendors out there, behind the scenes, will offer white label type products, that can be resold and certainly positioned in an MSP modality. So buy versus build. It depends what type of resources that you have. But there are, with the development tools out there right now, and also what's available through open source. There's a lot of technologies that you could go down that path and get kind of dangerous with. But just make sure that you have a real business plan in mind. And just wanting SaaS revenue isn't enough. Are you building, or will you acquire, or will you pass through a technology that people are willing to pay for ultimately? That's the ultimate question, I suppose.
It really is. And, we did application development and, in the MSP, and it's hard to stop scope creep, right? They
Oh,
want this one thing, they want this, oh, wait a second. Now they see it. Let's do this, let's do this. And all of a sudden, we talk about the MVP, right?
yeah.
Making the most valuable product right away. But you got to have a very different mindset.
So an MSP that's doing the application performance, the application development is an interesting take on this
Yes.
too. So I wasn't thinking about that. Um, which is a great, MSP model to be in. So if people don't have development, resources, just like the cybersecurity and the other pieces that we've talked
Right.
about, it's a great model for business. The hard part is the company that you're dealing with, if they aren't, fully transparent with what they're trying to create, then scope creep will happen because they didn't help you scope the project right to begin with. And it's always on the MSP, right? Oh, it's the MSP's fault because you didn't tell me I needed to do this, this, and this. And it's black and white. You're supposed to build this. Well, when we get to that point, there's also things to consider like A, B, and C. Do you want to go down that route? Um, that's part of the scope too, yes, but the MVP, what do we need to get there? And there's things that you find along the way. So yeah, that's a tough position to be in. And that's just the beginning. Once you roll it out to your first customers and they start banging away on it, and it changes things. It changes things again. It's tough.
Very good point, Don. I've always said it's not that difficult to make software. It's hard to sell it, though.
It is hard to sell. That's the toughest piece. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. So, maybe an MSP, type service could be not only developing the app too, but offering the sales and support around it too. That could be interesting. Through a VAR network or something like that. Could be interesting. Nice little turnkey option for an asset for a tiny shop.
Right.
But it's not always the case. So even the SAPs and Oracles are outsourcing a lot of their development work too,
Sure are.
specific project based. So
But I've always had the, build or buy, but we're at a point now where some of these tools are so mature, right? And you can white label so many things. And even if it does 90% of what you want, that may be good enough for the first version. So there's so many tools available. So you really have to consider that when you're exploring this.
you do, and are you making an enterprise app or a phone app? You are using Swift, or what app, what platform are you building it for? There's so many things to consider, and if the company that's paying you to build those apps or enterprise applications for you, if they don't understand who the ideal customer profile is, then they might be spinning their wheels. So that's probably a deeper conversation too. So yeah, you're as an MSP, you're being brought a project. How much thought went into that project on the front end before it got to you? Is that part of the discovery process?
As a board member, Don, what are your biggest challenges?
So there's a lot of things that go into the board. One, I was brought in by Riverside Capital, so they're an investor in Logically. So obviously protecting the investment is at the forefront. But that's not the only thing. Making sure the team is happy, making sure that the strategy is being executed on. And that's obviously something that Logically is doing very, very well.
Yeah.
They're having a great year, and there's a lot of excitement at the board level around that. So, just the standard challenges, but I don't think anything is unique to Logically and the team.
So we had this, impression that these PE firms are these, Excel crunching, faceless, kind of, bottom line driven, corporations. And you're here to tell me that it's not that bad.
It is not that bad. It is not that bad. Now, so there's an element we all have bosses, right?
Sure.
And that will never go away. But private equity still has the employee, at the top of the stack, and happiness, and that goes along with all the investments too. So when a company like Riverside, and I was not part of the investment team, but when a company like Riverside invests, they invest in the people. They don't just invest in technology and strategy. It's the people that keeps everything together.
So when I talk to MSPs, there's three things that keep them up at night, and it's been fairly consistent over the last 3 to 4 years. One is security. They're worried about their clients clicking on something, getting ransomware. Two is human capital. How am I going to replace these big technicians if they leave? How am I going to get new ones? These big corporations are paying a lot of money for them. And then third, with the advent of PE, it's just general growth. I'm really not good at sales and marketing. I'm more of a technician-led corporation. How am I going to grow?
Yeah.
What do you think about those three?
That's great. And I'll focus on the third one. And that's what bringing in a partner like a Riverside or any PE firm. And, you should, if you're considering going through an acquisition, even if it's just a partial, bring on an investor that has a center of excellence that is going to help you grow. The funding is just one piece of it. So there's bad money too. You can bring in an investor that isn't participating and that isn't helping the business grow. That's not necessarily what you want. A company like a Riverside who has internal sales and marketing excellence resources is really what you leverage when you bring in that sort of private equity partner.
Yeah, it's a really strong point of sales and marketing, and trying to partner with it instead of doing it. I made the critical mistake back in the '90s. I hired a salesperson. I handed them the yellow pages, right?
Right. Oh man.
I just didn't know back then, right?
Right.
There's the whole marketing. We have to set up calls, etc. But finding a partner that can actually help in that is really a great way to go.
Yeah, and it's not, you can't take their word for it. There's a process. Trust the process once you do bring in that partner, and heed their advice that they bring. But you should ask for the backup, the proof, while you're doing your diligence on your side too.
Smart. So then I started my business back in the '90s, and I was working way too hard, 14, 15-hour days. I'm sure you're no stranger to this. And
when does that stop? Is
I
it
know,
stopped? Yeah,
it's a really good point. Was not paying attention to myself, eating poorly, staying up late. Got myself up to 340 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've come down from that mark.
Way
You're like
much.
339 now.
Yeah, that's right. Doctor says to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. My daughter was just born.
That's real, man.
So, I'm punching the steering wheel as I'm driving home, right? It's my pie hole. I'm the one who did this to myself. 46-inch waist. How'd I do it? So I spend the next 6-7 months, lost 130 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at it as a finish line.
No,
right? You have to, it's a complete change of the way you are. And people want a quick answer. How'd you do it? How'd you do it? What's the discipline? That's how I did it. I got
good for
focus.
you.
I got a routine. I had some. So I wanted.
And you had your family in mind. You had an end game.
I had a kind of come to Jesus moment. Yeah. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life.
Oh, I could stand to lose a few pounds myself. My discipline is around work-life balance, and it sounds like you and I had the same 90s, early 2000s, maybe until recently, lifestyle where work consumes you. And I think being guys is part of that too. So that mental health issue, that taboo, like guys are tough, guys, don't worry about your feelings, just go and move forward. And I think once you understand that that's not the reality of it, and it shouldn't be the reality of it, you need to have self-discipline and force a change. And I'm not perfect. And these are all new things for me. I had, a family life-changing event in the last 60 days that have made me kind of second guess a few things.
Whoa.
Yeah, and whether it's a conversation with a doctor or something happening in your family life, you stop. You're getting a sign from somewhere to saying to kind of reevaluate some things. So I've taken the steps in my life to take mental health very seriously into my work life and family life.
It grounds you, this kind of news.
It does, and it gives you a new perspective on things. So what you think is important um, may not be.
I have this ongoing thesis that discipline is a spectrum. And I think prioritizing, like you just said, is one of them,
Yeah.
self-discipline and routine. And um, it's amazing what needs to happen in order for us to make these changes.
It is. And if you're not willing to do it, you can expect the same results, right? I guess at the end of the day.
What motivates you, Don?
My family does now. Selfishly, before that, it was the money thing. I wanted to be successful and pound my chest and um, maybe do things better than my friends were doing it. Maybe that's what I thought was important for me at the time. But now, so I'm 11 years into marriage and family first. So everything that I'm doing is for better school or better, home life balance. So yeah, that's what grounds me.
And how do you measure success given that motivation?
That's a great question. Am I going to bed happy at the end of the night? And am I waking up ready to do it again? Maybe those are the two levers that I've got to pull. And, for me, it's am I able to do things on the weekend with the kids that I want to be able to do? Can I go to volleyball games when my daughter has them? Can I be the den leader at my son's Cub Scouts? Like those are measures for me now that weren't always there because of other things that I thought were priorities.
That's really, really refreshing. I appreciate your time today. You didn't have to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my
Anybody
pleasure.
listening, how can they get in touch with you? Any customers? If you want to talk to anybody, probably LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best. Or if you reach out to Josh, he'd be
Josh
happy.
Skeens,
Yep,
CEO of L.
absolutely. He can share my email address with anyone. Love to have a conversation.
Thank you so much for your
Thanks for
time.
your time.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.